So again, my name is Tiffany Potter, and I'm pro-offsets. I don't think offsets are the only answer, but they are part of the solution. I'm used to speaking in a very very technical crowd, and I have a feeling that a lot of folks in here may not understand offsets and their technical nature. So I've decided to share with you my personal transformation that I've had towards offsets. I was an endangered species biologist in Yellowstone National Park, and I lived there for 8 years. And I was hired to track Canada lynx, and I spent 3 solid years in the most remote part of the park, the most remote part of the lower 48 states. I was anti-market, anti-finance, anti-Wall Street, and I wanted to live a very simple life. And I believed, I was really driven by my values for conservation and wanted to change the way threatened endangered species were managed. In this 3-year period, I had a really big epiphany. And what happened was I realized I was working for an agency that was understaffed, and it couldn't really fulfill its mission. The Endangered Species Act was not working. Private landowners around the park were frustrated with this very bureaucratic system, and they were participating in a lifestyle that involved shoot, shovel, and shut up. And I was frustrated. And I realized that command and control and governments telling people what to do maybe wasn't the most effective form of conservation. That our most treasured possessions, at least for me, were becoming liabilities. And I began to wonder what would happen if we started looking at them as assets. You know, what if we did finance or incentivize landowners to do the right thing? I hung out my Park Service hat, I enrolled in the Yale School of Forestry, and I began to study environmental finance. I took an internship in the United Nations, helping ambassadors of small island states understand the Kyoto Protocol. The Kyoto Protocol is a system where countries have agreed to reduce greenhouse gas emissions despite climate change. And there's a framework called the Clean Development Mechanism. This is a framework that allows private sector capital to fund clean energy in developing countries. This was another profound moment for me, because I realized that developing countries are growing at a pretty quick rate, and they're beginning to mimic the exact same mistakes that we have made. They are putting together coal-fired plants, there is not smart transportation, there is not smart planning, but the Clean Development Mechanism allows private sector players to go in and make smart investments in clean energy and give investors some confidence that they can do this and make some money. And for that effort, they're given a benefit. They're given currency and carbon credits. So it was tough for me to get my head around it because I didn't quite believe that it was real or that it was legitimate. I took a job with a private equity firm that raised a $400 million fund for carbon offsets. What was remarkable to me was that they raised this money in about 2 weeks, just like that. They didn't have a very defined business model, but yet investors were willing to throw their money at this. And it was astounding to me, having worked in conservation for 10 years. I mean, if you could harness that energy and that power of that financing in a legitimate way, just imagine what is possible. At the moment, though, I wasn't interested in making money, but I did want to understand, could these projects be truly legitimate? So I took a job with Point Carbon. It's a European company that tracks different project development and provides market intelligence for the carbon community. I was hired to track North American projects. So for 2 years, I looked at every single carbon offset project in the US and Canada. I looked at how they developed the project, who was investing, what standards they were using, how they were verified, And I was really quite shocked. Yeah, so one of the things that shocked me the most was that I was talking with foresters, landfill operators, agricultural dairy farmers, and a lot of them were telling me about how they wanted to, let's say an Iowa dairy farmer. He wanted to put in a digester that would help him produce renewable energy on his farm and potentially produce some renewable energy into the local community, displacing fossil fuels. But the project wasn't big enough, and he couldn't get a loan from any banks. In the carbon community, what you can do is you can get money from these carbon funds. And carbon funds actually put the money together. And so farmers just like him across the country are putting in place these projects that are displacing fossil fuels that would not have otherwise happened. There's no way they would have gotten that money. These are projects that are verified by third parties, these credits that are registered, and I mean, they're tangible projects. So it was a situation for me where I started beginning to believe that, this was a legitimate thing. At the macro level, so taking it away from the micro level, I started thinking about the atmosphere. The atmosphere, at a point right now where we're on this, it's an important time that we're in right now in terms of managing emissions and what's happening with climate change. We have to do something now. And the atmosphere doesn't care where the emission reductions come from. It just cares that they're real and that it happens today. It's going to be very expensive to transform our society into one that produces less emissions. And we only have so much money. Think about your pocketbook. Think about your local governments or your federal governments. There's only so much money to go around. That means we're going to have to be really frugal, and we're going to have to take care of the low-hanging fruit first. What are the most affordable projects, real projects, that we can do today? I'm the first one to tell you that I would love to see a coal-fired plant, a dirty one, shut down tomorrow. But the truth is, it's what would be replaced. Well, let's say a coal-fired plant would be replaced with a cleaner plant. The cost of doing that would be transferred instantly to the consumer. We would all end up paying for that out of pocket. What's a little more realistic is giving sometimes to utilities to put in place these cleaner plants, which do take about 2 or 3 years. So in the meantime, though, those companies should be paying for real emission reductions that are the cheapest possible. So for me, this has been a personal journey. And these projects, they have to be enforced, they have to be monitored, verified by a third party, and registered. And it's not the only part of the solution, but it's a temporary solution. Find offset projects, there are only so many of them. There are only so many landfills, agricultural methane sites, that the whole purpose of using offsets is to provide a temporary solution now. You can't have a system of offsets in the long term. There aren't enough of them, and that's not the point of the program. So, I'm just going to close by saying, I think it was George Bernard Shaw once said, progress is impossible without change. And those that cannot change their mind cannot change anything. And my mind has certainly been changed. Thank you.